and welcome back to Porsche Club Insider episode 10. We've got a fun-filled episode for you today. We are at Podcast Studio at 5 North Main. Again, thanks to the folks at Coffee Bar Bel Air. We've got a nice latte to consume. I'm here with the regular cast and crew of the Insider. Myself, Vu Nguyen, your executive director, PCA technical director, Manny Albin, Porsche Panorama editor, Rob Sass, and Damon Lowney, our youngster, the digital media coordinator. Our special guest for today, longtime friend, Chesapeake Region member, PCA National Policy Committee Chair. I think that's the fun committee.
Yes, it is.
Bob Gutjahr, thanks for joining us today.
And retired Army Colonel.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Go Navy.
So
We are in Maryland.
Here we go.
We always have a great time when we are hanging around with Bob, with and without Jägermeister.
And with or without Manny as well.
Well, we'll get into sort of his dilemma that might be a first world problem, but I want to say that to me, you guys remember that movie Big, where Tom Hanks goes to that machine Zoltar and kind of asks about the future? He's kind of like the Zoltar, like he knows upcoming trends, and we kind of make fun of him at times when he
Car trends, not clothing trends or hairstyle trends.
Car trends. So more about that later. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the whole podcast as we get into that. But you guys been doing any car stuff lately?
Yeah, it's been unseasonably warm here in Maryland, and bringing the cars out for cars and coffee. The region's going to have a social and a tech session. It's going to be getting the cars exercise. So keeping up to my my rule of not storing the car, driving them when available.
Well, not only is it getting warmer, we're getting 60, 65 degree weather here in Maryland, but it rained, so a lot of this salt has washed off the road, which means we can be much more comfortable driving our precious vehicles.
Oh, by the way, Bob, this is Vu's PCA voice, according to his kids.
I noticed it's dropped a couple of octaves.
Yes,
it sounds pretty good.
More manly with the podcast.
I don't know what happens when they hit record. This just kind of comes out of me. Speaking of which, if you're listening to us, be sure to rate us, we love 5 stars. If you can, take the time to comment. I know if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, you can actually put a comment. We'd love to hear from you. We take suggestions. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Again, Apple Podcasts, you can do that. I don't think you can do that on Spotify, but if your platform allows to do it, please do so. Also, one more thing. Today, we are recording the video of this podcast because I guess you thought that Bob was so spectacularly wonderful looking that we were going to entertain maybe publishing the video along with the podcast. We'll check the footage later and see if it's worthwhile.
Well, Damon did shave, he told us. So
yes, I did. It's not very common that I shave, but I did.
Manny actually sent out an email and said, "Please dress nicely," or did you say, "Please don't dress
like a
dress how you want to appear"?
Like a homeless person, I can't edit that out.
I try.
Damon, you've been under the car.
Yeah, I've been busy. I've had a project that I've planned for over a year now, and it's all about getting to my IMS bearing and pulling the grease seal. I have an 07 Cayman, and some people say don't pull the grease seal, just leave it be. There are all sorts of different things you can do, but there are a few people in the club who are very knowledgeable and told me, pull the grease seal, never look back. If the grease ever comes out of that bearing, at least it'll have the splash lubrication. So that requires taking the transmission out, flywheel, clutch, pressure plate, and opens up better access to the coolant expansion tank. I'm doing everything.
So are you going to tell the listeners why you're really doing all of this?
So I can take it on the track and not blow my engine up. but then I have the lightweight flywheel, so I can start beating Vu again.
There we go.
Yeah, I'll admit that.
You were beating him without all this stuff.
I want to beat him more.
The last autocross, he beat you.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he didn't show up for anymore.
Showing up again.
I will be back.
I'm sure he'll be back. I'll see you at parade.
Oh, for sure.
I'll be back means I'm waiting for a new set of tires. But it's never the driver. It's the tires.
I'm waiting for my 4-liter to be built. No, Mr. Rob, you've been car shopping, or can we talk about that?
We can talk about it. I mean, it's kind of a regular thing. We always talk about it. So why should this time be any different?
And your recent acquisition is in line with the theme car of Works Reunion next week.
Right. Back to the 996 for how many times is this now?
This is like your fourth 996?
Steel Gray Turbo. So this would be the fourth 996.
You must really love those cars.
I do. I just can't get away from them. I mean, look, 2,990-pound curb weight. Just for whatever reason, the under 3,000 pound thing just always gets me.
And this is not a stock car, right? It's got some mods to it.
Yeah, coilovers, a recently rebuilt, sleeved engine. So, it should be a keeper, Vu. A 996 that I can hang on to for effing ever.
Over under anyone? Over under. I'm gonna say it's
4
gone.
months. I put it in.
I say it's gone by September.
Typically, Vu, I'm like about 1.2 years. So that's kind of.
What, are we talking about cars?
Yeah. I mean, the 997's been around for.
You still have that TVR?
Yeah, I still have the TVR.
Oh,
But how many miles has he put on the TVR versus how long he's owned it?
I put close to 1,000 miles on it, like in the first, couple.
Not
of weeks
on a
I
tow
owned it.
truck. I'm talking about actually driving.
How about your Cayenne?
That doesn't include flatbed miles.
Your Cayenne.
It is in the garage right now because unlike Maryland, there is, I don't know how many cubic meters or tons or whatever, how they measure salt. But the roads are full of it up here still.
But your Cayenne's gone, right? That was a fairly recent purchase, no?
No, the Cayenne, I had that for 2 years.
Oh, man. I can't keep up with you.
Time flies. But the Cayenne was around for 2 years.
So, Bob, you've got a big project that's car related that's ongoing.
Yes. To quote Manny, it is the compound, but we like to refer to it as the Black Sheep Tower House. So Ellen and I bought our forever home in Lee, New Hampshire.
World-renowned
Lee, New Hampshire, and that is about 2.5 miles from the University of New Hampshire in Durham. But we looked at houses across the internet for any number of years, seeking our retirement home, and we actually found this property in Lee. It's got 7,700 square feet, but the important part is that it has enough storage for our modest stable of cars. So we're very excited ultimately to renovate this house whenever we finish that. But then we'll be able to move our cars and have them all in one location in one fairly large garage. So we're really looking forward to completing the house and then having the collection up in New Hampshire. Right now it's split.
So I'm envious of the current garage, or you have like garage and then a garage attached to the house too that houses, I think, like 10 cars?
Correct. So we have an attached garage which can hold 3 of the smaller models, and then we have a detached garage that can host about 10 or 11 cars depending upon what model you ever try to shoehorn in there. So,
and then this new one, how many cars are you going to be able to stuff in there?
I don't think stuffing is probably the operative word. We probably could get anywhere between 15 and 18 cars in this garage. It was
so you have 14. What do you have? What are you looking at in the horizon?
You mean my Zoltar predictions?
Yes.
So I almost really don't want to do a Zoltar prediction on a podcast because I'm going to be giving myself away.
No one listens to this. No one listens.
He wants to buy it
I'm
first.
told this is very popular.
That's my mom and his mom, and that's about it.
So I know Rob Sass is listening, and he's curious. My prediction and what I would like to, what we're looking at right now for an affordable future collectible classic is a 1988 944 Turbo West Silver Rose Edition.
Oh, I left it
I'm
out
about to
hard
say
for a
that
long time.
train
ago.
No,
is
I
kind of
don't-
already
no, I
left
mean-
the station
Yeah.
up, Bob. I mean, that car has been sought after for a good long while. Are you thinking, even more appreciations in the cards? I mean, I think that's a future 6-figure car.
I do. I believe it is a future
best.
6-figure car, and I think
Yeah.
right now, even though some of the ships have sailed for these cars, I think that ultimately the market right now is soft for this car. I think it's worth a lot more than what they've been selling. I mean, if you look at the recent sales, particularly on BAT, and on even PCA market sites.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not going for the amount of money I would think they will be, particularly for a limited edition car like this. So,
Right.
I mean, if I can find the right car, I mean, we'll definitely take a look at that. I mean, one on bat a couple of months ago, I think it was maybe in September or October, sold for like 20 grand,
Which is
Yeah.
a steal.
Well,
which was a steal.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. But I mean, the 20 grand cars are the cars with 150,000 miles, and the seats are torn and all that
You know,
stuff. I honestly think that if
knowing a couple of Bob's cars, that does not scare him at all.
No.
Don't you have
yeah,
like a
can you
300,000
buy that
mile?
seat material?
So if you find the right car, and if you're
Yeah.
lucky enough to find an owner willing to sell it, I don't think you're going to find necessarily a rat. I think if you continue to look and you have your sources out, I think it's very possible that for something like a Silver Rose edition, that they're out there and they can be bought at a reasonable price, not a six-figure price, but a reasonable price right now.
So the
Right,
good
but
thing
I
is
think
that
even if you
the
paid 45 to 50 for a car with 25 to 30,000 miles on it, that would look very, very well bought in the not too distant future. I mean, I think I think you're right. I think they're headed for six figures for the best of the best. I'd like to have one of those and a 968 Club Sport.
And there goes the for sale
Me too.
sign on the 996.
Well, I mean, Club Sports are a fairly rare car.
Those,
Yeah.
that ship's
you're-
definitely
but
sailed.
also
that's
not
done.
bringing the money that they should.
But I think for a Turbo S Silver Rose edition, I mean, if you're looking at different cars across the market, I mean, one recently sold in the Northeast, I think for about 32, and that was on the market for a
Wow.
long, long time at much higher price. And
for those listening, the 88 Turbo S was special.
Yes.
It's the same as an 89 Turbo.
correct.
So when you see an 89 Turbo, it's just a Turbo S. But what it was special for, it was essentially very much like a Turbo Cup, which was the 911 Cup, if you will, of the time. It actually came out before
Yes.
the 911s did the Cup series. So it became very popular for club racing.
Yes.
When I was racing, you saw plenty of Turbo S's being just chopped up and turned into race cars.
Yep.
Because they were such incredible platforms to start with. So I think what we're seeing now, we're going to be seeing, is people, more to your point,
Yep.
is people who are taking these cars now, either retrofitting them back into street cars.
Yep.
Because they are valued, they're spending the money to properly restore them. It isn't just $5,000 or $10,000 cars where people just got running or cut a lot of corners or make it ready for sale. Now people are going to be using the right material and bringing it back up to par. Just the same we saw with the 911 SCs and the mid-year 911s.
I remember in San Diego region back in 06, 07, there was a member named Jad Duncan, and he had one of those 88 Turbo S's, but one of the later models that wasn't Silver Rose. 275 Hoosiers front and rear, totally stripped out. One of those plastic or Lexan rear windows, and he called it his Home Depot car.
Yeah.
And he was fast at the autocross.
Nice. Well, I mean, isn't it one of the few times when Porsche actually allowed the primacy of the 911 to be threatened? I think, if I remember correctly, wasn't the Turbo S actually quicker than a 3.2 Carrera?
I believe it was, but it wasn't heavily advertised at the time. I mean, you're talking about an incredibly fast, nimble car that was very popular with DEs, and then, of course, went into club racing. So, I mean, as Manny stated, some of these cars were heavily modified, and I think a lot of people are now going to be looking at buying them and then retrofitting and putting them back to original condition. I mean, there was one, if you're following the market, there was one on eBay, I think a month ago, and that sold for 15 grand. And the reason it sold so cheaply, of course, was it was a modified car, and part of the interior had been removed. So the challenge for these cars, particularly for a Silver Rose edition with its unique interior, is then trying to retrofit it and trying to get the actual materials to make it original again. And that's really the hard part. That's really the tough part for these cars.
Yeah, and that's what I alluded to earlier. I mean, that's why everybody shies away from a high mileage car with a tatty interior, because that sort of pinkish tartan seat material, I don't know if you can get it. And frankly, it'd be a good question for our friends at Porsche Classic is just, how well are the 4-cylinder transaxle cars supported at this point? Because it's something I'm not all that up on.
Isn't that the beauty of capitalism? When there's a need,
Yep.
someone's going to come forward, a supplier is going to find out where it originally came from and reproduce it. It's not going to be cheap, but it'll be there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right, but I mean, you can get every single tartan. You can get Pasha, obviously Pepita. So I mean, most of the seat materials, the classic seat materials that Porsche has used are available now to restorers. So why not the Silver Rose?
Well, I agree. I mean, over in time, I mean, these are going to be considered classic cars as well. So because Porsche is redoing the Pepita and the other unique tartan interiors, I have no doubt that ultimately you'll see this type of material unique to the Silver Rose edition produced or at least reproduced.
So just
I mean, if you can get 924 Sebring seat material, you ought to be able to get this stuff, right?
Yes,
You would
indeed.
Just to back up a little bit, so the 944 Turbo S, the Silver Rose metallic cars, that was a totally unique color combination, interior, exterior, that Porsche has never done again.
Correct, which is one of it in the inherent value of the car, right? I mean, it's very attractive because of that reason, very unique, and they were a limited edition, obviously. And that's, you asked the question, what Zoltar believes, what I think. I mean, I always gravitate to limited edition cars because they're very cool and they're one-offs. And even though some of them are orphan cars, the Turbo S is not an orphan car, it's just unique. And that's why I think it's so cool and why ultimately it's going to be, as Rob stated, a six-figure car someday.
I would agree. And hopefully we didn't ruin it for you by outing your prediction.
I am sure we have.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, obviously I'm envious of your collection of cars. I'm envious of your, Taj Mahal building of cars. But, I'm probably most envious about, and we talk about Porsche support, but you're married to someone that fully supports your passion for this. And in fact, I believe you sold her 944. So this endeavor.
You had to bring that up. You know she's listening to this, right? So
have you sold her father 76 2002?
No, that is, if I did
That's
that,
next.
I would be vaporized by my mother-in-law if I even attempted or even thought to sell that 2002 BMW. It's really a nice car, very nice car, by the way.
So Bob's spouse, for those of you that don't know, Bob and Ellen. Ellen is an instructor, PCA DE instructor.
National trained.
She had a wonderfully set up, blue 944, I believe.
Baltic Blue 944 S2.
Which she also
89.
shared with you to drive.
Yes, she did.
Because you didn't want to drive your own cars on track and mess it up. So you drove hers. Man. And then you chose to sell the car.
You're just incurring the wrath of every woman on this car. And I know I'm going to get the hate mail because of what I did with it.
But you track a car now. You track the 40th anniversary car?
Yes, we do. Yes,
nice.
we have a 2004 40th anniversary edition, and we bought that with the express purpose of replacing Ellen's 944 and putting that car on the track. So we've done some minor modifications to it to include GT3 seats, factory GT3 seats, tech equipment roll bar, and a few other things.
You did MO30 suspension on it too, right?
We did not do anything with the suspension. It's a stock suspension.
But what did the 40th anniversary come with the MO30?
Yes.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yes, it did.
I was like, it's not a stock.
I mean, no, it's not. It's not. And it's got the X51 engine, which has got 340 horsepower on the wheel. So it's a very, very fast, very capable car, far exceeding my capabilities. Ellen, I think, is challenged by it. Ellen's obviously a much better driver than I am. I'll freely admit that. And even she is challenged by it, but we've not driven it enough, unfortunately, because of COVID and everything else, to really master the car on the track. So a lot of learning curve with that car, but it's incredibly fast and just a great all-around vehicle. Just a wonderful car.
I can't tell you how excited I was when you came to me asking about, considering buying a 996, because I've owned my 996 since 2005, and I love it. And you came and you were wondering about all the details, and you, again, ahead of the curve. No one was looking for really a whole lot of 996s. You were looking for this special edition, and I believe your son has one too, right?
Yes. When my son had the funds to buy his first Porsche, he initially was looking at a Cayman, like Damon, and the Caymans that he was looking at, he wanted 2009 beyond, just to get away from the IMS issues, if you want to consider those IMS issues. So he was looking at that, and they were a little bit out of his price range. So I said, look, why don't you consider a 2004 anniversary edition, because they're not going to do nothing but appreciate, and you can get one where the IMS issue's been addressed.
Yeah, you don't have to pull the grease seal; you can replace the bearing.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we looked and surfed for a while, and then we found one in Providence, Rhode Island, driven by this nice little old man who really didn't put a lot of miles on it. The only thing he did was scrape up the wheels, and he had the IMS address. So He bought the car in 2017, and he's been thrilled with it ever since.
Awesome. And you guys have showed up together with the cars at events.
Yes,
with twins, right?
The first time we competed the cars together was at the 2018 parade at the Lake of the Ozarks. And of course, one of the most memorable moments for me at that parade was the man to my right, Manny Albin, my lifelong friend, comes up to me and comes up to Josh and looks at the wheels. And remember, the 40th anniversary editions have these chrome wheels, unlike any other 996. So Manny, who did not know at the time, comes up and says, "What's with the disco wheels?" and that's when I knew that Manny didn't know what the hell he was talking about when it came to 40th anniversary editions.
Yeah, and it's not even bright chrome. It's like a flat chrome.
It's like a flat chrome. It's a very attractive chrome. And of course,
but wasn't that the event where your son beat you?
No,
that was
I spanked him in every.
Well, no, I have a memory of him beating you at an autocross.
No. He beat me.
Because we had to put you on suicide watch.
All right. Can we change the subject slightly here? Bob also wrote a really fine article for Panorama that dealt with not just the 40th anniversary, but the other cool 996 special edition, which was the Millennium Edition.
Yes.
Oh, that was the Chroma Flare?
Yes.
Colors?
Yeah.
2000 996 with every possible option. We actually met a resident of Frederick County who actually owned a very low mileage Millennium Edition. We used that for the Panorama shoot, the photo shoot. Just an incredibly beautiful car with the Chroma Flare paint and the buttery soft, beautiful leather interior. Just it's like a tannish brown interior.
Yeah, it's not natural brown, but it's something like that. It's gorgeous.
Just extraordinary car.
Awesome.
That also is, to me, is another undervalued car.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and a
very
car
rare.
that nobody, few people remember and fewer people can talk about. I mean, the 40th anniversary edition gets a lot of buzz, but the Millennium Edition car, I think, is almost largely forgotten.
I would agree, Rob. I mean, Ted Zimmerman out in St. Louis runs the 40th anniversary site. And if you have a 40th anniversary edition or are interested in that specific model, Ted's 40th anniversary site is just awesome because he tracks worldwide anything that's happening with the 40th anniversary editions for sale of any car, any item. The luggage, of course, is very much desirable. But the point is that there's no such site. There's not that core of enthusiasts for the Millennium Edition as you would see with the 40th anniversary edition. It's unfortunate.
Which is interesting. Well, one more oddball 996 variant. How do we feel about Targas?
I like how they look. I guess I would enjoy the open airness of it. My only concern is just like sunroofs in general. Loanne's recent purchase, I had to stick that in there. We got her car and I got a slick top because I was worried about, the operation of a top down the road and repairing. If you have to repair that Targa top on a 996, for those of you that don't know, it's like a glass piece, right? That goes all the way back to the rear window. When it works, it's fantastic. But if it does break, then it's a pricey repair.
Yeah.
And of course, the first example of that was the 97 993 that first did that, the whole glass Targa look, which technically really is not necessarily a Targa per se, but I mean, Porsche's called it that, and we've gone with that since then.
Well, there's no turbo in a Taycan either. But let's not quibble about names.
All right, but coolest feature of the 996 and 997 Targa, what is it?
You mean opening the
hatch? Utterly unique.
Opening the hatch
It's
in the back?
Yeah.
That's what I wrote about it in our Mark Fresh, I think, the latest one.
Yep.
Yeah. I picked the Targa because I think every 911 should have had this hatch that opened up.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's very cool. So one of the cars that I was looking at, the Zoltar conversation again, before we bought our 964 30th anniversary edition was a 964 Targa. The 964 Targas, and of course the ship has sailed on this, but at the time when I was looking at this 6 years ago, I knew that 964 Targas were underappreciated and really quite rare. And so I really lost out on an eBay bid for a 964 Targa, high mileage car, but really nice car. I think it sold for like 15 or 18 on eBay.
I remember those days.
Yeah, I remember those days. And since then, when I lost the auction, I was like determined to find another one. And in this case, the one on eBay was a Carrera 4 Targa.
Oh, your wide body car?
No, it was a Targa.
Oh, it was a Targa.
Four-wheel drive Targa.
Oh, okay.
And I tried to find another one, but I never was able to. I mean, so 964 Targas are extremely rare. And ultimately, of course, I'm glad that I couldn't find one because we finally found our 964 wide body, which is a really cool car too.
So speaking of limited editions, did you guys see the release on the Macan T? And what does that mean?
Touring.
Yeah. Well, Damon wrote the article for PCA about it.
Yep. T for touring.
Yeah.
T for touring. And so it slots between a base model and an S?
It does.
Okay, so it's like the lightweight theme. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, lightweight. I wouldn't really call it that. You know, it's not going to be like a sports car, but it has revised suspension is probably the main thing that differentiates it from other Macans. So sportier tuned suspension with the anti-roll bars. I believe if you opt for the air suspension, you also get the PDCC, or there's some combination where if you get the air suspension, you get this really sweet suspension. It also has some exterior enhancements, if you call it that, with let's see if I can pronounce this, agate gray metallic.
Agate gray?
Agate gray.
Close.
I like agate. Sounds like an island off the
Agate and regals.
Hey, that's the Italian pronunciation, right?
Man.
So yeah, that color is everywhere on the car. So it's a pretty nice Macan, but you need to be okay with the 4-cylinder.
And I've had a loaner Macan 4-cylinder. It's still a turbo.
Yeah,
right?
still a
It's
turbo,
still a turbo.
261
It's
horsepower.
261 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds.
It's still
and people are complaining about that.
it's still a fast, fun, tossable vehicle. So that's pretty cool.
I
know
love
somebody-
I love the T idea.
Yeah.
Because and I think what was one of my Mart Fresh picks too was a 911T because it seems great for people who the GTS is too far out of their price range, but they want something sporty without even going to the S. So here's this like the slot for enthusiasts because it has a tuned suspension, like Damon said. I know they use lightweight glass on the sports cars. I'm not sure.
I don't think they do on the
did that.
Macan. I'd have to go back and recheck my
So
article.
it's not a huge weight savings, but once again, it's an enthusiast car, so it's enough to differentiate from the base model. And some people snub their nose and say it's really not worth it. Just get an S. But if you're at a certain price point, and if you want a special car, I think the T fits that bill. And so
I
Yeah,
think
I would
that
agree.
engine is the 2-liter VW engine, or a variant of that. I know somebody who has chipped that car, or at least an older Macan with the 4-cylinder, easy 350 horsepower.
Absolutely. There's definitely
And-
potential with that.
The car already feels like a hot hatch with some extra ground clearance, and I think this is just going to accentuate that feeling.
I totally see
I think
a
it's
Macan
cool.
T in our future. I think that would be a cool car to have.
Yeah.
The price point, and it is unique. That is a T version. It's more simplistic and
in your personal future,
well,
No, I think he means
PC
just
the club
really
car.
big
You're
up
gonna-
our
you're
friends
gonna
at
sell Luann
PCNA
Civic?
when they start hitting the press fleet. Because
so when
it's-
Loanne passes the Civic to Jason, then I think a Macan T would be a great replacement car. No? I think so. All right, so let's talk about a little bit Porsche news. Did you guys see the cancellation of the 3G network and what that means to some Porsche vehicles?
I learned about this today from you.
Yeah. So this happened to me a few years ago, and it was when I have a remote start in my Honda Odyssey. And
I was there for this.
yes. Yeah. And I'm able to lock and unlock my car. Oh, I used to be able to lock and unlock my car remotely, and I was in California for
Was
an
it the
event.
first time you were using it?
Yes. And,
First time I seen Boo sweat like a pregnant nun.
So-
he was in dire
so
trouble.
I had the best idea. My wife was flying into the airport as I was leaving from BWI. So I said, you know what? I'll leave the Odyssey in the garage, and when you land, you just walk up to the car, call me, and I will unlock the car via my phone. It has always worked. However, the day that we needed it to work, and my wife gets to the car and she calls me to unlock it, it doesn't unlock. And so now she's standing in the garage, not able to get the car. Long story short, the reason why it didn't work is back then I think it's a Viper alarm system was working off of the 2G network, and they had canceled the 2G network without me knowing or the world knowing, and so therefore I couldn't communicate with the alarm anymore. So fast forward to I think yesterday or the day before, the 3G network is now out of commission, and a lot of cars utilize the 3G network to communicate whatever it is to its owner about the status of the car being locked, unlocked. You guys know how you have some of those apps on your phone. So some Porsches are affected by this, and if your car is one of them, you should be hearing from Porsche on the particular repair if it's able to be repaired. Like in my alarm situation, to repair it, you just needed a new module that could communicate on 3G. So I would think that there are some fixes for these cars that are on 3G.
Does your iPhone 4 work on 3G? Or?
It's an iPhone 11. Thank you very much.
11. Wow.
Wow.
This reminds
Ellen has been good for you.
I know, she has.
this reminds
Brought
me
me
of
into the modern age.
This reminds me of Mazda recently. Actually, in Seattle, a bunch of Mazda owners, their infotainment was bricked and stuck on NPR. For better, for worse. I would love that. I would
Damon's
notice
dream.
Exactly.
No matter what he does with his radio, it just listens to NPR or produces NPR sound.
Yeah.
This was Seattle. I mean, how did anybody know that it was noticed that it was?
Yeah, exactly.
To go back to Vu's story, because he left us some key things out. She didn't have to call you. She just had to go to the app
Yes.
to get it. And
right.
We were
That's
flying,
right.
we were flying to L.A.
Yeah.
Oh my!
So by the time we land, he turns his phone on. He's all happy-go-lucky, we're in L.A., and he sees like 60 missed calls from his wife. And at that point, he was like, oh, my God.
Yes.
So he's in sheer panic, and we're at the luggage waiting for our luggage to come out. And he's got my phone, his phone, he's trying to access,
Yeah.
while talking to her and trying to, because at that point, I think she was home already.
No.
Didn't she get a ride from
was
No,
from BWI.
so thankfully, one of my best friends, he's a cop, and he happens to have the ability to get into a car. And so I dispatched him to the airport. I'm like, Ty, get to the airport ASAP. And I don't care if you have to break the window or at least get her home. So educate me on this one here. What's going on with LMDH and Porsche and Red Bull?
Oh, it's two different things, obviously. The LMDH program, they had a lot of tests, and everything is moving along with flying colors, which is great news. It's interesting that we haven't seen, or at least I haven't seen a lot of the other manufacturers. I think, was it Audi is supposed to be coming out with something too?
I'm not sure.
A hypercar. But Porsche is obviously releasing all the photos, and everything seems to be going very well. Yeah. I'm hoping that the rumor, according to our race guru, Jim Hemmig, is that Petit Le Mans, we might see the first test of the car, which would be a great reason to do a road trip down to Petit Le Mans, if that's true. And then, of course, you have the Red Bull and F1, which I've been hearing about that from Jim
Long time. Yeah.
For 6 months, I think, or even longer. And everyone says they're this close to inking a deal. So it's one of these, I'll believe it when I see it. But it looks like it's leaning that way, that they'll have an agreement with, of course, it won't be for next year, but I
think 2025,
yeah.
I believe that's when the new engine regulations kick in,
yeah.
If it happens.
Jim is super excited. I think we get a text at least every couple of days following up on this.
Well, Bob and I, we remember Porsche's fortunes or failures in open wheel racing, and Indy. When they had Sports Car Together Fest at Indianapolis, I was explaining to people and they really didn't understand. Yeah. I said, Porsche's had miserable history at this place. It hasn't been very positive. And in Formula One, they had the footwork errors. And I mean, you can go back to the 60s with the one race they won with Dan Gurney at the French Grand Prix. But other than that, when they had the footwork hours project where they did the engine supplier, and I think they only lasted.
They didn't even last the full season. It was like 3 races. That was it.
Then they got booted out. That was the ultimate egg on the face. So, they had some other success with McLaren, I believe.
Yes, they had many successes actually with McLaren. I think they won 3 manufacturers' titles and then 2 drivers' titles, or maybe it was the other way around. But with the TAG turbo and supporting the McLaren team back in the 80s, Porsche was the preeminent Formula One engine manufacturer at that time.
And Senna was one of the drivers for a while.
Yes, he was.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Prost, and it was
They had quite a team.
But the Formula One is and especially now that you get to see the inside of it with Netflix and Drive to Survive, it is a very cutthroat industry. And just because you're Porsche doesn't mean that they're going to lay out the red carpet for you and you're just going to come in and walk over everybody. Will Porsche do that with the LMDH program? I think that very much so.
Mm-hmm.
But with Formula One, it's going to be interesting to watch. How things pan out, especially since this will be the first foray as the VW Group manufacturer. So it'll be one side of me wants to see him, and then one side of me is like very hesitant because it's a tough field to enter.
I think Jim's probably
the
most
open wheel curse.
Jim's most excited is he's hoping that this will bring a new crop of Porsche enthusiasts to the world.
Yeah, I mean, well, the one thing we've learned from Netflix and Drive to Survive, it's certainly brought a whole new audience in America, especially younger audience.
Mm-hmm.
I felt really old when I was telling some of the younger guys in the office that I remember seeing Ayrton Senna race live, and they looked at me like I saw Moses part the waves. Really? You saw Senna?
Oh.
Like I was listening to a podcast today, and the guy was talking about he wasn't around to see the RS Spiders.
Oh my
Penske
gosh!
RS
Are you
Spiders.
kidding me?
Yeah.
Whoa, I remember that like
I was
yesterday.
in the pits watching.
It was only 15 years ago. It was only 15 years ago.
But
So.
that's
Yeah.
depending what your age is.
Yeah, I
you
guess
weren't
so.
if you weren't into Porsches back
Yeah.
then.
Wow.
But because I saw like Thomas Lauterbach, remember?
Yep.
He was like part of Porsche Motorsports, but he wasn't. Now he's like I think global director or something really high up in Porsche Motorsports. And I said I remember he was like in charge of the engines
Yep.
of the RS Spiders when I met him down at Road Atlanta. So,
We've been-
anyways, it'll be interesting to see Formula One what happens.
Well, we've been around a while, and we've seen some of these people kind of move up, and it's pretty amazing. And it's kind of a small world too. You kind of bounce into these folks in the industry. So, anyways, back to Mr. Gutjahr here. Why did we bring him today? What did we talk about?
I know Rob and I talk about this a lot, and with Nathan Mers, about how many cars. At what point does owning a certain amount of cars almost become a part-time job and maintaining them? and I was talking.
The key word is maintain.
Yes, well, of course. Not a junkyard full of cars, but running cars. And I was talking to the guys at Cars and Coffee, all the Porsche guys, and I said we're going to probably talk about this topic on the podcast. And they all started thinking about it, and they're like, "Yeah," he goes, "it doesn't matter if it's all Porsche or what makes they are, but how much it is a lot of work keeping track of, especially with ethanol in the fuel.
Yes.
How often do you drive it, changing fluids? It becomes I'm maxed out at 3 by space.
Same 3. Any more and it cuts into Netflix time.
How much does
So
not the chill part, just Netflix time?
there you go again with Netflix and chill.
There you go.
Hey. Yeah, it is. It can turn into a part-time job. I actually keep a spreadsheet, as most Porsche owners, have a routine of annual oil changes, just because you don't usually hit the mileage in a year, but you certainly hit the time limit. So I had to create, not only for Porsches, but for the other cars that I have and maintain, a spreadsheet of how much oil, what the filter, and what the weight oil is, and what I used last, and because I can't remember it all.
You do realize, though, that the calculus is so much different when you're talking about Porsches. We're all sitting here talking about gas and oil. I mean, I've owned as many as 4 cars at one time, and one of them was a Lotus, and I can tell you that alone changes the calculus considerably. Porsches are gas and oil cars. Let's face it. I mean, it's great, but when the worst that you have to talk about is, hey, I want to make sure that my ethanol gas doesn't go stale, or my oil's not contaminated. It's like you get into a Lotus, after a 3-week layup,
Or like
and
a
you've
TBR
got
or
no
something.
clutch and you've got no brakes.
Have you ever had a desire to buy an English car?
Fortunately, not.
If I
You mean
won,
your
like-
buddy Ron hasn't tried to talk you into an English car?
Even Ron Gordon cannot talk me into buying a Triumph or a Sport. I'm sorry, no, it just doesn't work for me. Sorry.
no TBR in your future.
No, there's going to be no TVR.
You
Ron,
should see the craftsmanship in this car. It's amazing.
I can only imagine.
So we are very fortunate that for most Porsches that we own is oil and gas, but it's still a lot because you're talking about, we talk about life cycles of tires and, 5 years to 8 years, maybe tires. Sometimes I've looked, you've got a number of cars in your garage that, yes, oil and gas for the most part, but you're like tires and consumables alone, you got to manage that too, right?
Yes.
And they do hold a lot of oil and gas too. Let's
Right.
face
It's
it.
not a
Yes, they do.
it's not a
You know, it's
4-quart
like
oil
24
tank.
gallon tanks and 9-quart sumps. I mean,
Now, has Ellen, because you were never known for the maintenance part of car and remember, Bob has a phenomenal collection, and he's never like you said, he's always bought them at the low end.
Yeah.
When we laughed at some of the stuff that he bought, and then we watch it climb in value. But your 914.6, I remember when we took you to have it picked up from restoration, and the person who restored it said they refused to drive it because the tires were so old.
Oh, I remember the
And
story.
Bob was like, "No, they're fine. They got plenty of tread." And he was booking down the interstate at well over the speed limit around corners and these long, bank turns. And I thought, man, if this tire blows out, there's nothing we can do to save him.
He's a man of faith.
But we finally
You gotta
got the
believe,
tire.
Boo. You
We
gotta
finally
believe.
shamed him into replacing the tires. And the guy who was replacing the tires, number one, he told us that the installer broke his thumb.
Did he really?
Broke his thumb
Yes.
because he couldn't get the tire off.
I
And,
forgot about this story. He never forgets.
and then they had to call Michelin up because they couldn't figure it didn't have the date code on the tire. And they were really curious.
Pre-date code. That's how old they were.
March 1969.
Oh,
This
my
was
God.
an original
Yeah,
tire. he
original
had.
Michelin's on the 914.
And this would have been in the like late 90s. When,
So here's a question. I'm glad that you got new tires, but
Have you replaced them since?
did you keep the originals? Because me being the hoarder that I am, I would have kept them and said I got to have the original tires for the car.
I am a hoarder myself, but no, the tires are something that just
Really?
yes, the tires are going to go. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
The only tires I've actually ever kept that I still have are the 3.25 16 tires that came with my 356 Speedster. So the Speedster that we have, I kept those just for sheer curiosity because you just don't even see them. They're
Yeah.
the old tube tires. So yeah.
Wow.
yeah. Well, Lou, you remember what I did when I had the 21,000 mile 912E that was on the original tires? I could not bear to. I mean, they still had the original curved weights and all that stuff. They were the original Uniroyals that came with the car. I just took them off. I never dismounted the tires. I bought a set of cookie cutters and put some modern tires on it and called it good. Kept the original wheels and tires together.
Yeah, but then you turn around and sold the car and the wheels and tires.
Now,
Your
No, I
story
didn't
doesn't
necessarily
end the way
sell it.
I like it.
I traded it to Nathan for a 914. It was just too nice for me. I mean, it just, it was too nice for the
just
car.
too nice for me.
It
So,
was.
so
I
he
mean,
went
it
to
just- it
like
made
this
me
baby
nervous.
blue
You know, I
914.
like my kids to be able to climb in and out of cars, and it had these super
Oh.
fresh cloth inserts in the seats. And I don't want to be that guy.
I
don't wanna,
love
you
how
know,
you
neither.
use your
I don't want
kids.
to raise a kid
Don't
like
bring your kids.
Don't
like
bring your
Cameron
kids into
Fry
this. He
from
justifies
Ferris
all
Bueller's
this. I
Day
remember,
Off.
wasn't it just last year? You're like, oh, I think I'm going to look for a cab so that way my kids can enjoy the drop top. And how long did that last?
Well, I still have it, and they're starting to grow out of it. Because the one thing that I'd forgotten about cabs, the top mechanism actually takes up a fair amount of the rear seat space.
Didn't
So-
take that into the account when I purchased the car.
Yeah.
See, Rob's different than us in the sense
Right.
that he
I'm
can
envious
easily
of you.
sell a car and not even think twice about it.
Wow.
Have no emotional attachment
Yeah.
or anything to it.
I am envious of that.
Yeah, I am too.
No,
I
no.
can't
I'm
do that.
envious of you guys. I mean, because the stuff that's passed through my undeserving hands over the last, 20 years is ridiculous. 72 911S, long gone. 73 and a half CAST, long gone. I'm envious of you guys.
So
my,
can-
my 3 cars are the only 3 cars I hope to have for the rest of my life. I'm sure that's not true, but that's how I want it to be.
You got to set your bar a little higher.
No, diesel, crappy Camry, and a nice Porsche.
Life is good for I'm happy that you are happy.
Thank you.
So can we talk about the models that you have? Are you okay with sharing that? Or
Sure.
So so when I first met you, you had the green 914-6.
No, it's white.
Oh, what's the green
I
one?
don't remember any details.
I never had a green
I
car.
thought it was green. No,
The only green Porsche I ever owned was the 356C coupe I bought in Fort Worth, Texas in 1981. That was the incorrect color, and we restored that, and it's now back to its original color of Elfenbein white.
maybe it's because I want a green 914-6 and I said that. Also, I love your 350. Actually, your 356 was the first 356 I had ever driven.
Oh, nice.
I love that car.
Everyone in the region drove that car.
I thought
Let's not go there. We're not telling that story.
under Manny's care.
Oh my God.
Who wants to drive? Maybe we'll get into that a little
Bob's
bit
garage
later.
is open, ready for opening.
Yeah.
Copies of the keys.
Yeah, and your Speedster. You have a G-body Speedster.
I have a G-body 1989. We have a 1989 Speedster. Yep, Illinois. Yep.
Yeah,
Without air conditioning.
With that Manny found out after the fact. Yes.
Why the heck anyone would get a car like that without air conditioning? I don't know.
it's rare. It's rare, and the top's always down.
So
anyway.
you would have been one of those people who bought an RS America with all 4 options, right?
In real, yes. You'll find that out when you're married. Keeping the other half comfortable is
That's
very
right.
important.
Keeping them happy is very important. Yep.
And you have a 911S.
Yes.
You
1973 911S.
And a 924 Sebring edition.
Yes. 79 924
Now,
Sebring
when he
edition.
bought the 73S, we're not talking like a museum car.
No.
This thing was in very sad shape. It was,
was
running,
Right.
but what did you find out? There was no oil cooler in the front.
Yeah, there was no. All right, so we bought it in 1989. I mean, I again, the Zoltar thing. I knew that these would be collectible someday, and this car was actually advertised in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in 1989. It was being sold in Effingham, Illinois, and I bought the car because it was a rat for like $6,800 in 1989. But as Manny stated, the interior needed to be refurbished. It did not have a front oil cooler. The engine needed to be rebuilt. I mean, it was smoking when I bought the car, but it was all there. And I was fortunate enough back in 1989, during those days, where parts for these cars were still available. So I was able to actually obtain through the horn grille headlights, the fog lights. Stoddard had those for $89 in 1989.
Wow.
And they were selling as one-offs.
Right.
I was able to purchase the chrome wheel arch molding as well. That now is you can't even find that.
And it had factory sports seats.
And I had the factory sports seats that came with the car, so we were able to, when we restored that car, we just refurbished and reupholstered the factory sports seats.
When he got the car, I used to call it Dumbo because the headrest, the side of it was peeling off. So when you look from behind, it looked like Dumbo's ears.
They do. As a matter of fact, we still call the car Dumbo.
Wow.
Manny christened the car Dumbo, and it's still very true.
The passenger side window would not go down, which is lovely in the summertime.
With no air conditioning.
With no air conditioning.
No, so back in the day, I mean, there were very few 73 911Fs with the electric windows. And so this car actually had the electric window lifts, and it also had factory air conditioning, which when we refurbished the car, we put that back in. So the car now is
It's a beautiful car.
Well, thank you. And it's got every factory option that Porsche could provide to a 911 in that year, with the exception of the rear windshield wiper. Everything else is on that car. It's really it's a neat car.
And I'll save the best car, which we know is probably the oldest car you have, to the end. But you also have, you talked about the 964 wide body car. That is also quite rare. Tons of paint chips in the front because it's got 400,000 miles or something.
It has. It
looks like it has 300, 400.
It has 199,000 miles on it. It was.
Is that because the odometer broke?
No, it's because the woman who owned the car, lovely lady out in Dublin, Ohio, it was her only car. And she had no children. She had no pets. This was her child. And she drove this car everywhere in and around Ohio for her work and for her leisure, recreation, and everything. The family just loved and cherished this car. When we bought this car, it actually had receipts that were like 3 inches thick. It was just every service, every possible thing that you needed to be done on this car, she did. So very, very well maintained car. I didn't even blink twice. And Ellen didn't either. Ellen is more the conservative of the two of us, but she didn't blink twice either about buying this car because it was so well maintained. The only issue with the car, of course, was she lived on a gravel road, so she drove up and down this gravel road for literally 20 years that she owned the car, and as a result, it had stone chips. But to Rob's earlier point, the interior is perfect. It's not a rat. What it really does need is a paint job. And other than that, it's really a beautiful car.
But I would leave it as is. I think you should be proud of that patina and how many miles are on the car.
There's a debate, between enthusiasts like us about whether to keep patina or whether to restore a car perfectly. So I've got two cars that you could say have the patina, but to me, if you're going to do right by a car, particularly our 912E, which is shedding paint like winter lawn furniture,
yeah,
or a 964, which this lovely lady drove all of her life and has the stone chips. I'd rather repaint the car and do the car right as opposed to driving it around and having it look like it's just gone through a war.
So your 912E is one of the cars that had paint adhesion problems, right? So
correct.
That car
there's
is
nothing to be done there but repaint the car.
I agree, Rob. And just to stop Manny from giving me grief about it is worth just the paint job.
It's what I call the geography card because every time the paint chips off the door, I try to figure out what country it represents. It looks like Ireland last time I saw it.
and we were going to use it.
It's actually probably looking more like Africa right now. There's so much of the paint.
We were going to use it in the PCA Juniors booth so that way kids can just walk up to him and peel the paint off it and take a piece of a Porsche home with them.
We were afraid of lead poisoning, though.
Prep work.
So we should really educate, I think, to a certain degree, the people listening in on this podcast that in 76, 77 time frame, Porsche went with different undercoating and they went with the zinc dip and
not undercoating, but primer.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And the paint had adhesion problems at the time. So there are certain models, certain cars from that era, 76, 77 era, where the paint just did not adhere well. And it literally flecks off like looking at lawn furniture after a long winter. And our 912E is probably one of the worst examples of that, sadly enough. But it's a wonderful car, and ultimately we'll have it repainted.
I know. I think we've talked about this, and Rob and I have talked about this. Every time you read about the 912V, you read that how they made 500 sunroof models,
yes,
and 1,500 non-sunroof models. Right?
Something like
2099, I think was the production total.
Correct.
But I have yet to find a non-sunroof model. Everyone has one of these rare sunroof models.
Well, I think somebody just arbitrarily reversed that or just made that up because I've owned two of them. They both had sunroofs. Everyone that I've seen has a sunroof. So
I've seen a lot. Admittedly, one of the fun things I do is look on eBay for the cars to see what's for sale out there. Many people do. And I've seen a lot of non-sunroof 912Es on eBay, as well as on other marketplaces as well. Not necessarily BAT, where there's more of a premium there for nice cars, but normal market sites and eBay, you see a lot of non-sunroof 912Es.
In the Chesapeake region, there was we had an event, Chesapeake Challenge, the Concours.
Yeah.
And something that caught my eye was it had on the deck like 912E.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a Targa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, well, I know they never made a Targa 912V.
Yep.
But, you never know. So I walked over.
Here's what happened is somebody's 2.7, like 75 or 76 2.7.
Well, let me tell the story.
They put a Type 4 engine in it.
You got to let them tell the story, Rob.
On it. And, instant Franken 912.
Never go to a movie with Rob.
Rob, you got to let him tell the story.
I can tell you what happens at the end of this.
Sorry.
That's exactly what he did. He did a great conversion, though, putting the... But people walked by and thought it was a rare 9, and he wasn't selling it as nothing.
Yeah. But
what it was that he converted it. But
and for
cars.
For 912E enthusiasts, getting that deck script, the 912E original deck script, that's those deck scripts are rare as hen's teeth. It's really hard to find.
Right. That, and I used to have nightmares about needing a heat exchanger.
Yes. Yep.
So you talked a little bit about where you kind of hunt for cars. One of your cars actually found you out of New Jersey.
Yes.
Look at that. It's like, it takes him a while. He has so many cars. It took him like
trying
2
to figure out
seconds
my database
to go
here.
through his database.
What have I told Ellen and what I have not told Ellen?
That's how you know you have a lot of cars.
So-
He literally had to take a second. Which car was he talking about?
So we were very fortunate. And again, this is serendipity, of course. And for many car enthusiasts, that's part of what the game is. But through the company I work for, a colleague notified me that he was potentially looking at this car, that this widow was trying to get it sold. And the more we talked to the person representing the car, I believe it was her financial advisor, the more interested we became in this car. It was in New Jersey, and we finally got through the financial advisor because I had to establish my bona fides as a Porsche enthusiast. And then I started talking to this lovely lady, and turns out that this car was a 24,000 mile 1980 911 SC with a paint to sample of Byzantine gold metallic, which was a Mercedes color. So this car, hopefully, if you're going to go to the Porsche parade this summer, the paint to sample cars is going to be the specialty of the historical display this year. So this car will be in the historic display because it's a total one-off color. It's a very unique Mercedes gold color that is not metallic. It's pure gold as opposed to having a metallic flake in it. And it's chocolate brown leather interior with a lot of unique options. The individual who owned the car originally owned the Quaker Bridge Porsche Audi dealership in Princeton, New Jersey, and he special ordered this car.
Wow.
So it also has, interestingly enough, a front standard spoiler, but he also ordered for a dealership application the infamous rubber spoiler that was popular at the time. Manny, don't give me the dirty look.
Manny's looking at
I know.
me. This is where the
Your
video
car
will
was
come in
voted,
handy.
That was voted the ugliest Porsche parade, I believe, by the PCA Juniors.
No, we finished third at Indy last year.
That was a mercy sympathy. Like, please, you won something, never bring this back again.
Explain to our listeners why this tale is controversial.
Well, it's just ugly.
It's not ugly. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I mean,
that's what is ugly. People say that.
so
It's very functional.
so back in the day, again, just as a tutorial, back in the day, I mean, the turbo look was very, very popular. The whale tails were very popular in the late 70s and 80s because of the Porsche Turbo, and the factory actually crafted a rubber spoiler that looked exactly like a 77 factory spoiler that you could actually a dealer could add to the back of the deck lid. And that was the case with this car. I mean, so it's got the correct front spoiler and it's got the factory optional rubber spoiler that Manny hates, that really actually, I believe, complements the gold color of the car, and it really sets it off.
My friends that are listening to this, I often talk about a sedan color. There is just some colors that should belong in a sedan and not
Like
a sports
beige?
car. Like beige and this gold. This is definitely a sedan color. Oh, wait, it was a Mercedes-Benz sedan color.
So when I saw this car at Sports Car,
Man, you guys it's a tough crowd here, I'm telling you.
so when I saw this car at Sports Car Together Fest out at Indy, I had heard that you had brought that car and that it has a rubber spoiler, and I was thinking, yeah, don't all whale tails have like that rubber strip? Or not all of them, but many of the tails have the rubber surrounding it.
Correct.
This thing's totally rubber,
Yep.
like the whole thing.
Well, it's got a metal base, obviously,
Yeah.
to hold the rubber.
But it's not just the outside.
Yeah, but it's entirely rubber. And the thing about it is you don't see too many of them more because many of them decomposed.
Right.
Many people thought they were, like Manny, many people thought they were ugly, so they removed them from the car. As a matter of fact, the previous owner, this lovely lady, the shop where she took the car to have it serviced for years kept telling her, you got to take this rubber spoiler. You got to get rid of it. And I'm so glad she didn't, because the car is low mileage. The rubber spoiler is very well preserved, and it really, really, I think, puts a very nice appearance to the car.
Let's talk about, to me, the holy grail car in your collection that I believe at one point you had buckets, not bucket seats, but you had a bucket as a seat. Because you had to move it.
That's the one you drove to New Jersey
Yes.
on a seat that wasn't bolted down
So,
in like 5 a.m. when
Where-
it was freezing.
do you ever remember any of the bad stories? So what they're talking about is, of course, I've got, Ellen and I are very fortunate to have a 1954 356 Speedster.
It's awesome.
It's one of the first 200 Speedsters. So if you're into 356s, having one of the first 200 Speedsters is a pretty big deal, I guess. And all these are considered prototypes. But anyway, so we've owned this car for a while, and we had the seats redone by John Paderek Restorations in New Jersey, in Chatham, New Jersey. John, of course, is a dear friend and one of the best restorers in the country. So, we gave him the seats. Unfortunately, I didn't have a seat to drive up and get the seats from him, and I wanted him to install the seats. So,
And you didn't want to pay to have the thing towed.
I did not.
And this was pre-trailer.
This was pre. I did not have a trailer, so the only solution was to either borrow a friend's trailer or to drive the car up. And the first option,
because it's only down the road. What is it? 4 hours?
it's 4 hours. Yes.
Oh my.
So
On the interstate.
And it has no top.
and it has no. Well, it does have a top. It has a Lobo top, but it's very, very.
I've never seen that top up.
It's not good to have a Speedster top up because you really can't see out of it. So I actually wanted to do the first option, which was, of course, trailer the car. And I had a friend lined up to trailer it. Unfortunately, his truck that was supposed to tow the trailer broke down. And so I didn't have that option. And I had this appointment scheduled for John to have the seats put in. So, necessity is the mother of invention. And so we had Ellen's 944 seats in the loft above the garage. And I said, I can make this work. So
I love you.
so I went up in the loft and got this like 200-pound seat, dragged it down from the loft. And then we sort of like installed this 944 seat in the Speedster. And
He says installs, but I don't think he has a
Well,
wrench set in his garage.
I have a lot of wrenches, but the wrenches weren't going to work for a 944 seat in a 1954 Speedster. So I used pillows to sort of like wedge in the seat. And,
So this was not bolted down.
it was not. It was not bolted down. I basically wedged it in with pillows. And I know everyone listening to this podcast are probably rolling their eyes. And I
we
know
won't
Ellen
even
is probably
mention that there probably weren't seatbelts involved
Can
in
you
this.
imagine what the obituary would have read?
You may not want to mention that there were seatbelts not involved with this, but yes, there were no seatbelts. The 944 seat was wedged into the car, and I literally drove the car from Frederick, Maryland to Chatham, New Jersey at 4:30 in the morning and got up to John's in enough time for him to install the seats properly.
Let's not even talk about the fact that 356s have 6-volt lighting systems. So it's kind of like having a candle out in the wind lighting your way.
But I love the fact that he will hop in any one of his cars. I think you even hopped into the Sebring and drove it to Parade to Chicago or something like that.
We did.
Without reverse gear or without second gear.
That's yet another story that Ellen does not take kindly to. But yes, we did not have. We lost first gear and reverse in the.
I'm still trying to wrap my arms around the Speedster with the wedged in 944 seat, and it's not just any. It's a pre-A car, right? So it's like the most primitive Speedster that there is.
Yes, and actually the story is in Porsche Panorama. I believe it was in the. I want to say it was in like the October 2010 edition.
You
of
only
Porsche
do this
Panorama.
stuff for
Panorama
Yes.
articles. I know.
because like Damon and I will go to
Reviews and
Florida
clicks.
and back, and there's no story. Yeah, you drive 2 hours, and you got a whole 2,000-word panorama story about your misadventures.
But back
What
to
did the
our
disclaimer look like on the Speedster story? I need to go back and find
There was
that
no
issue.
disclaimer,
Yeah.
actually.
But back to our theme of why we brought him here and talking about
What is that
maintaining a car collection. And that's why I underlined the word maintain when you mentioned it earlier. I guess you get around to some of this as it's needed. It's tough for you to stay on top of every single car.
Well, like you, I keep a spreadsheet. One of the things that I learned in the Army through all my many years of service in the Army and working in and around motor pools for all those many years is if you don't keep up with maintenance, if you don't track maintenance, then the cars, the vehicles are going to suffer as a result. So I have a very, very detailed spreadsheet that I keep so that I know exactly, when the oils have been changed, when the car has been serviced, when the last time I drove it, how many miles I drove it. I keep all that to include oil weights, all this, just like you. I keep that. And what we normally do for the spreadsheet is we typically rotate the cars out in driving them so that the cars are driven. And we keep track of that, and we keep the cars relatively fresh when they're driven. And so that more or less takes care of it. One of the most important things that we do for maintaining these cars, of course, is having them on battery chargers. I cannot begin to recommend to anyone who does not drive his or her Porsche on a recurring basis keeping it on a trickle charger, because even if you don't drive the car that often, particularly for the newer cars, if the car sits for a month or two, you're probably going to get a code from a newer Porsche because they automatically go into a default mode, and you're going to get a code because the car hasn't been driven.
And it's not good to drain these batteries to
it's not.
Sometimes you can't even bring the battery back. So keeping
That's
them
correct.
on a trickle charger is definitely key.
Yeah, it's actually it's probably one of the best things we've ever done for the cars over the years. I mean, back in the day, there weren't the trickle charger technology wasn't there, so I would always struggle when I had multiple cars, 3 or 4, like when Damon's age. We had 3 or 4 cars, and trying to keep these cars going and always having to jump start the cars because the battery would just go down, and we'd be replacing batteries constantly. But with trickle chargers, it's a totally different aspect, and it really keeps the cars drivable as opposed to just worrying about that kind of thing.
So keeping them on trickle chargers, driving them is probably the best thing for them.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't let a car sit, and I really feel guilty when cars sit for too long. And unfortunately for me, this winter, the cars have sat too long.
Mm-hmm.
It bothers me that I've not been able to drive. I mean, we've been up in New Hampshire, at our house in New Hampshire, and the weather up there has been extremely
I
cold.
can babysit the cars for you.
We're not going to. We
that's
tried
another
that once.
episode to talk about.
That's an entirely different episode and a bunch of other stories.
Now, what do you consider too long letting them sit?
For more than a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for more than a month. I don't like to let a car sit for more than a month. It really bothers me, and I keep track of these things and making sure that the rotations take the cars out and you can drive them at least.
Are you using any kind of fuel conditioner during the winter?
I'm not. And I should be.
Yeah.
I should be. Yeah.
It'll make you feel less guilty because I really subscribe to the same theory.
Yep.
When I bought my 914 and it was very low miles, and I asked the owner, "Oh, how did you store it in the winter?" And he said, "I didn't."
Yeah.
He goes, "I never stored this car." He said, "I always drove it when the roads were clear because I don't like to store cars."
Yep.
And that always stuck in my head. And so I always tell people I really don't store my cars. If there's a nice day in the winter, and like Vu said, the roads are clear of salt, I'll make sure I put 20, 30 minutes of driving in it just to get everything flowing in the car, and then reset the clock and put it. So I may go 4 or 6 weeks between cars of driving.
Yep.
But I still put in the fuel conditioner because we learned that from Tech Tactics Live, and Lake Speed told us, explained what ethanol can do to your car.
Yes,
that's a big,
particularly for cars with carburetors too. It's really,
older cars.
The older cars
that
really
set
make
up
it
for
work.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's when originally we thought about bringing you on here, I thought of your car collection and how it's 3 cars like Damon and I were talking about. We have 3 cars. We collector cars, the cars you take care of, and that's a lot of work. It's I can't imagine having a girlfriend, a wife, and 3 cars.
For me, it's
not that I'm recommending that.
We've entered
amazing
into
how
a
you
different
transitioned into
category of podcasts.
That's just too much to take care of.
I don't think we want to go there.
So you have a collection of cars, but the last time I was at your garage, you don't really have a collection of tools.
I actually do.
You do now?
No. We're
Well,
not talking
because-
factory tool sets.
Yeah, we're talking about
Or
tools
tools
to
that
work
you
on your
actually
car.
use.
I think that you are so shocked and awed by the sheer number of cars. And believe me, I'm not trying to brag about the numbers of cars. You guys are the ones that are bringing up the cars, but I do have a full up a set of tools for the cars. I mean,
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Have you opened it up yet?
I opened it up and handed the tools to somebody else.
So do you do like the basic maintenance, like the oil changes and such, or what do you
Typically,
what do you do, or do you have someone that comes in, or
Typically, I can do oil changes, but
Mm-hmm.
that's about the extent of my capability. I am not mechanically inclined. I will be and Manny will.
but that alone saves a lot of money
It does.
by
It
doing
does. It saves a lot of money by doing your own oil changes, particularly for the 6-cylinder cars, which take so much oil, as we all know. I mean, it does save
10
a lot.
quarts.
Yep.
Yeah.
9.5.
9.5,
actually.
yeah.
9.5.
But you gotta buy 10.
You got to buy 10, but they're 9.5. That's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
Wow. Well, I knew this would go by quick, so let's hop over, get some updates on Tech Tactics Live, Manny.
So this will be this podcast people will be listening to. We would have already done the state of the market,
Right.
so I would, if you didn't get the chance to watch it live, certainly watch the episode again. Nathan Mers will be telling us what he learned from Scottsdale, why Scottsdale auctions are important. Scottsdale always the beginning of the auction season, what they're telling us about the collector car market. Of course, as we do this podcast, the whole Ukrainian-Russian thing is on everyone's mind, so who knows what it'll be like in 2 weeks from now, what it does to the markets. But that has some relevance, but I don't want to get too much into that. What Nathan's going to be talking about, or we'll have talked about, is really where the market stands right now and what that says about the rest of the year.
Yep. And Damon, why don't you give a quick update on upcoming videos and videos that just recently dropped?
Yeah, so by the time you guys hear this, we have dropped the dry ice blasting video.
Which is doing really well.
Yeah, we've got, I think, running up on 4,000 views, which is nice for
in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, in less than 24 hours. It's a tech video, but it's interesting. Went over to our friend Bob Miller at Speed Motors, and he showed us what was it, $7,000 and $10,000 ice machine and a $25,000 generator.
That's right.
Can do for your car.
Air compressor.
Exactly, or a generator for the air compressor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, air compressor, exactly. So that video's out, and also by the time you listen to this, the installation of a 2-quart deep sump on my Cayman, which I've been talking about for months, thinking I would get it edited sooner. Will be up.
This is what I like about that video. I was telling Damon yesterday when we were on the phone talking. I like the first 2 minutes of the video because he empties the oil and it goes everywhere. And I said, you know why I love that? I said, because I watch all these how-to videos and everything goes by perfectly. And they make it seem so easy. And yet when you go do it yourself, you look like what Damon looked like, oil going everywhere. And I thought, this is the most realistic how-to video because now I feel better that, yes, this is going to happen. Yeah. The oil is going to go everywhere as much as you try to prevent it.
You put something down on the ground and the oil never lands there.
No, it doesn't. It splashes out.
He changes shirts.
Yeah, I changed shirts and all of a sudden, boom. I knew that was going to happen. Having done oil on that car, I knew it was going to splash out.
But it's a very, very good video, though. Very realistic. And it made me want to get a deep sump and do it myself because it looked pretty easy.
Yeah. And I sent it to Charles Navarro, who created the kit. And, he hadn't seen me do the installation, and I was thinking to myself, he said, don't use too much sealant, do this, do that. And I'm thinking, man, I hope I did it right. And he sent the video back. He said it was excellent. So perfect. I think it'll be a good guide for anybody who wants to improve the cooling on their 987 Boxster, Cayman, or 986 Boxster. Same kit applies.
So now you are a resident deep sump expert at PCA.
Yes, I am. Yeah, and if anybody has questions about a 987 Cayman, I've been known to answer about some of the projects I've done. So feel free to reach out to PCA.
And anything else?
We have an exhaust sounds video from air-cooled Porsches at the last parade, which is a long time coming. And
the parade is coming again. Yeah, I better hurry up with that video.
I know, right? And then a 964 Carrera RS video. And those will be early March when those are released.
Cool. Mr. Sass, quick update on Panorama.
Well, we have the annual youth issue coming up. And as most people remember, we don't really set an arbitrary, age limit under 40, under 30 or whatever. We just look for stories featuring people who are, say, conspicuously younger than sort of the average PCA demographic. So that's coming up. And it's kind of fluid at this point. So if anybody who's listening to this knows of a great story involving younger PCA or younger enthusiasts, by all means, let us know because we're starting to put that together now.
Cool. Well, by the time you all listen to this, PCA and driving events and tours and all that is going to be in full swing. We will probably have already been to Works Amelia and we'll report back on that. But Works Amelia sold out. Treffin Broadmoor later this spring also sold out. Parade registration for the Poconos. We're on track to set records. I mean, it's going to be a busy year. We'll end this and let you plug what you're showing on your shirt there. But yeah, there's just so much going on. And I hope all of you that are listening that are PCA members, and maybe even those that aren't, will come out to our events and see what's going on. Again, I want to remind you to like and comment if you're enjoying this episode or past episodes. And I'm going to let Bob close it out with a little plug on an event that
really quick. If you're listening to when you're listening to the podcast,
yeah.
So we're trying to get the dates right because we're still bi-weekly. Works Reunion already happened.
Yep.
And the big reveal happened.
Oh yeah.
So that podcast will be our following podcast from the one you're listening to, and we'll give you all the behind the scenes of that big reveal and how it happened, and more info about the car that you're going to see, or about. You would have seen probably pictures about, but you'll get some behind the scenes, and maybe we'll have someone from Porsche or PC or PCA management on to talk a little bit more about how this special surprise happened.
Yeah, we'll definitely have some social media. We'll be dropping some cool stuff out even while we're at Amelia. So I'm super excited. I don't think I've been ever excited this much on a reveal working together with Porsche. But anyways, I will turn it over to you, Bob. Tell us.
You got 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Thanks. Well, first, I'm really excited and looking forward to that reveal myself, but we're also very excited about Boardwalk Reunion. The third annual Boardwalk Reunion will happen on 15 October of this year at Ocean City, New Jersey. It's a singularly unique event in that it is a combined Zone 1 and Zone 2 event. So we're very happy and thankful to have Zone 1 and Zone 2 collaborate and work together. This is more or less an exotic cars and coffee, if you will. We meet at the Ocean City Municipal Airport, and then we have a parade through the streets of Ocean City up onto the boardwalk. And we're on the boardwalk just hanging out for about 4 hours on a beautiful October day at the Jersey Shore. The weather at this time of year at the Jersey Shore is just spectacular. We've been really fortunate the past 4 years to have just great weather, great turnout in the crowd. Last year we had 355 cars registered. We can put up to 450 cars on the boardwalk, so we're looking forward to having everyone come to Ocean City, New Jersey on that day. Also want to do a shout out to you guys personally. Vu, thanks very much for all the support from the national office for providing equipment and support, and the social media for that. And then, of course, Manny is the new tech director. We have tech sessions during the course of the day that the National Tech Committee has supported and has presented at that time. So very unique day on the boards, beautiful weather, great opportunity to look at cars, to go shopping if you want, or as Roxy and Albin, Mandy's lovely spouse, did this last year. She literally slept on the beach for the entire time that the cars were on the boardwalk.
Looks like I married a person without a home.
Careful there.
But no, we look forward to having you. And if you have any questions, go to our website, boardwalkreunion.org.
What's
Thanks.
the date for that?
15 October 2022.
There you go. Mark your calendars. It is an awesome event. I've been there twice. Fun day. We literally take over the area, and it's such an amazing sight to see all those cars on the board. What better than to have funnel cake, hot dogs, and pizza, and have your Porsche on the boards and get that beautiful breeze coming through. It's a fun time.
I recommend getting there early to the airport. Because like Bob said, it's almost like a cars and coffee, and half the fun is
Yes.
at the corral at the airport before, because you're walking around looking at all the cars that are actually a lot closer together, because once you get on the boardwalk, it's pretty spread out.
Yes.
It's a long haul.
It's rows of two, and the numbers of cars we have now actually go more than a mile on the boardwalk. I mean, you can literally, it takes at least, 20 minutes, Manny? At least 20 minutes to walk and go right down.
30 minutes for me, but yes, 20 minutes.
30 minutes. This year, we hope to have some surprises this year. The featured car this year will be Roadsters and Speedsters in honor of the 70th anniversary of the 1952 America Roadster.
Very cool. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening. Again, be sure to like and comment. If you're not currently a PCA member, just grab that VIN and go to pca.org and join. And if you don't have a Porsche, of course, we have the test drive program. Folks, until next time, stay safe, and we'll catch you down the road.